So, DreamWorks really went from Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a masterpiece of cinema and their greatest film they've ever made, to whatever this is. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patron over on Patreon. And if you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
A Kraken will always answer the call.
It's time to go big!
Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken is the newest film from DreamWorks Animation. It tells the story of Ruby Gillman, a seemingly normal teenage girl who discovers that she's actually a sea kraken living on dry land. It turns out that her mother was actually a kraken princess. So Ruby, angry at her mother for lying to her for all these years, escapes to the sea and meets her grandmother, the Kraken Queen, who tells of a battle between the Krakens and the evil mermaids, and also agrees to show her how to use her Kraken powers. And then Ruby discovers that one of her classmates is a mermaid, and says that mermaids aren't all that bad, and she wants the war between the Krakens and the mermaids to stop. And the only way to show that there's no need to fight is if Ruby and her work together to get a magical trident that the Krakens unfairly took from the mermaids all those years ago. Now, for those of you wondering if this story sounds at all familiar, that's because this is basically the plot of The Little Mermaid 2. Like, literally, the plot is exactly the same, except it's done with Krakens as the heroes and mermaids as the villains. And unfortunately, there's no Ursula's crazy sister. And just like how The Little Mermaid 2 had a lot of story problems, this one does as well. Except here, the style and presentation actively got on my nerves really quickly. You ever watch a modern day film and you notice that some parts of the film were obviously made so that they could be clipped into TikTok videos, and they have the same obnoxious modern style that plagues a lot of terrible TikTok videos? That's what large chunks of this film are like. The style is very in your face, and you'll either dig it or you'll hate it, and I'm in the latter camp. And I just realized that I've become the grumpy, curmudgeon old man complaining about the youth that I swore I'd never become. But, okay, let's put the style aside for just a second and judge the story as is. Because I found this story to be one of the most predictable stories that you could possibly imagine. Like I said, this is basically The Little Mermaid 2 mixed with Turning Red. You can predict, beat for beat, pretty much what's going to happen. And no, it's not because the trailers for this film basically spoiled the climax. Like, when Ruby Gillman, right after being told by her grandmother that mermaids are dangerous, just instantly agrees to completely trust the first mermaid that she comes across without even blinking an eye. And how does this mermaid say they can finally bridge the gap between the Krakens and the mermaids? Well, by Ruby retrieving the trident that gave the mermaids their powers, of course. Gee, I wonder where this is headed. And this wouldn't bother me so much. Actually, it would, but maybe I could tolerate it a little bit more if it led to something new or something interesting, but it doesn't. This film contains cliches that I find genuinely frustrating and hard to sit through, and I kept waiting for something genuinely subversive to happen with these cliches, but they play them all straight. Every single problem in this movie would have been resolved in like 2 minutes if these characters just sat down and talked about what was going on. I get that's supposed to be the message. Don't keep secrets from your kids. Let your kids spread their wings. You know, all that stuff. But I really hate these kinds of stories where literally it wouldn't happen if these characters would just have a normal conversation with each other, because the tension here feels so forced and artificial. It really doesn't help either that they still refuse to actually explain what's going on even after it's clearly reaching a boiling point. For instance, when the mother finally figures out that Ruby's been sneaking out at night and hanging out with the mermaid, and Ruby starts losing her temper, all her mother does to try to talk Ruby out of doing what she's about to do is to say some vague things about her keeping secrets from her was for your own protection, or you don't know what you're doing. For goodness sake, woman, use your words. How about you just tell her that you'll sit down with her and explain everything to her instead of these vague statements that don't actually explain anything? What were you even trying to keep from her? That your own mother was a little controlling? Why exactly does you thinking that your own mother is a little bit controlling warrant all the secrets and all the lying that you were doing to your daughter for years? So, yeah, this is yet another animated kids film that deals with the issue of generational trauma. You know, like Coco, like Encanto, like Turning Red, like Strange World, like Elemental. For the love of all the things, can we please move on to something else? Encanto already did it great. Can we please try something new? This was fresh and new when it was first done, but it's quickly worn out its welcome. Now, I will be fair to this movie just a little bit. There were things about it that I liked. Some of the underwater shots look really nice. The character designs on the main characters are actually spot on, and the characters aren't terrible. I mean, they don't stand out at all, but they're not horrendous characters or anything like that, except for whatever the Uncle Kraken's name was. Honestly, I don't even remember his name, and I'm too lazy to look it up. Yeah, he was irritating. The final kaiju battle was actually really good, and there were a few halfway decent jokes sprinkled throughout the film, many of them courtesy of a sea captain who's paranoid that the Gillmans are actually sea monsters. And there actually was a really nice scene between Ruby and her mother, where Ruby was panicking, and the mother, even though she caught Ruby doing something that she shouldn't have been doing, doesn't yell at her or criticize her for it, but instead agrees to just stay with her and wait for her to calm down. It's a really nice, sweet moment. But honestly, all these positives are of little consolation when it would often be followed up with something that left me deeply annoyed, or the fact that it's in service of a cookie-cutter story that I found so predictable to the point of aggravation. Bottom line, the more the film progressed, the less I liked it. This is not an instance of there's stuff I liked and there's stuff that I'm more neutral towards. The stuff that I didn't like, I just didn't like. I found it actively obnoxious. This film is annoying. I hated the almost TikTok-style pacing. I hated a lot of the in-your-face humor. And I hated the story. Especially when you consider they add absolutely nothing new to it, other than just making the mermaids villains, as if that in and of itself is enough of a change. But who knows? Maybe I'm just not the target audience for this. Maybe if you are a fan of this type of humor, or the presentation, or at the very least, it won't negatively affect your experience, or if you haven't seen a single film that's even a little bit like this before, then maybe you'll enjoy it. But even then, I can't think of many people who would see this as a great film. At best, you could possibly see this as a simple little passable diversion to watch with your family, but at worst, you'll find it pretty irritating like I did. Ruby Gillman Teenage Kraken gets an empty shot from me. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch, or to read more of my reviews, make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.